It happened after a late work event in a downtown bar, around midnight. I was 20-something, average build, nothing that could ever pass for threatening. I'd had maybe 3 drinks, just enough to blur the edges of the night, but not enough to make me careless. Normally, the company sends a car home for us, but I hadn't reserved one. I didn't know when I'd be leaving, so I called an Uber. The company would reimburse me anyway. The car pulled up just as I said goodbye to my coworkers. I got in the back seat, polite as always, and introduced myself. The driver, let's call him Ed, looked completely normal. The kind of normal that makes you drop your guard. We talked casually for the first 15 minutes, until the city lights faded behind us and the quiet of the highway took over. He told me he lived in a neighborhood not far from mine. It was out of the way, the kind of route that only made sense for him, not for me. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. The conversation slowed, and I turned my attention to my phone, scrolling mindlessly. Then he broke the silence. "You can take a nap if you're tired," he said. At first it sounded harmless. I smiled and said I was fine. But then he added, "I always get sleepy when I've been drinking." "You sure you're not?" Something in my stomach tightened. My whole body suddenly woke up. I told him I wasn't drunk, just a little buzzed, and that we'd be home soon anyway. His laugh was low, dry, the kind that doesn't quite fit the mood. A few minutes later, he said there was construction ahead on the main road, a single-lane traffic jam that could take forever. He asked if I minded taking another route. I hesitated but agreed. I just wanted to be home. My partner called right then, asking when I'd arrive. I made sure to speak clearly, to mention his name, that he was waiting for me, that he knew exactly where I was. The driver didn't say a word during the call. When I hung up, his silence grew thicker. We left the highway, taking an exit I'd never used before. I stared at my phone, pretending to be busy. I didn't want to talk anymore. That's when he said quietly, "My house is just 5 minutes from here." Something cold spread through my chest. We were at least 25 minutes from home, further than when we'd started. I forced a small laugh and said, "Oh, that's funny. My boyfriend and I were actually thinking about moving out here." Just noise, just words to fill the air and make me sound unafraid. He didn't respond. Instead, he turned onto a narrow road that, thankfully, I recognized. We were heading the right way again. Relief washed over me. For a moment. 15 minutes left. The world outside was familiar again. Then he spoke. "So, what does your boyfriend do?" I answered politely. "How long have you two been together?" I told him. "Does he make you happy?" I smiled softly. "Yes, very happy." Then came the question that froze the smile on my face. "Do you make him happy?" I laughed awkwardly. "I hope so." He took a side street, slowed the car, and pulled over. The engine hummed in the dark. He turned, resting his arm on the headrest, and asked, "Would you make me happy too?" For a second I thought I misheard him. Then he repeated it, slower. "Do you want to make me happy tonight?" My mind raced. Empty street, no lights. 1 a.m. I had no idea what he might have in the car, so I used the oldest shield every woman learns to use. I don't think my boyfriend would like that. His smile vanished. His tone dropped. "He doesn't have to know. Come on, make me happy. I know how to start." I told him my boyfriend was waiting for me, that I loved him, that I didn't want to hurt him, that I just wanted to go home. Something in my voice must have cracked enough to sound human again because he stopped talking. The air between us was heavy, sick with silence. Then, wordlessly, he turned the car around and drove. When we finally stopped in front of my house, I got out and muttered "thank you," reflex, survival, habit, and ran inside. As soon as the door closed, I broke down, shaking in my partner's arms. He told me to report it. I did. I opened the app. but when I saw the profile picture of my last driver, it wasn't him. The car was the same. The face wasn't. The man in the picture was older, darker, maybe 40-something with a turban. The man who drove me was white, and just a few years older than me. Uber refunded the ride and never followed up. The police didn't take it seriously. Nothing really happened, they said, but they're wrong. Something did happen that night. Something that still echoes every time I see headlights pull up beside me in the dark. This happened back when I was still in college. It was one of those huge universities known for its wild parties, endless crowds, and a whole street filled with bars and loud music. My boyfriend, who's now my fiancé, had gone back to his hometown for the weekend, so I decided to go out with a few friends. I guess you can already imagine what happened. I drank too much. I was at that point between laughter and blackout, when you still look fine, but your body's already on autopilot. And deep down, I knew I didn't want to be the burden of the night, the friend who needs to be carried home, so I decided to go back alone, by Uber. My friends insisted on coming with me, but I told them not to worry. Honestly, I just wanted my bed. I wanted to call my boyfriend when I got home and then fall asleep. Before leaving, I took a screenshot of the driver's name and info and sent it to our group chat, just in case. When the car got close, I hugged everyone and walked out the door. It was one of those chaotic nights. Hundreds of people leaving bars, cars lined up, horns blaring, light rain falling. I was trying to find my Uber in the middle of that confusion when a man rolled down his window and asked if I was waiting for a ride. I said yes. He told me he wasn't my driver, but that he also worked for the app. And if I canceled my ride and took his, he'd get me home faster. I was exhausted and dizzy, just thinking about lying down and sleeping, so I said yes. I canceled my ride, got in his car, and he started driving. At first, he seemed friendly. He called me pretty once or twice, but I ignored it. I was used to hearing that back then, especially in college. Then we started talking about books. I had told him I studied literature, and he seemed genuinely interested. He said he was trying to learn English and found it really hard. We talked about that for a while, and for a few minutes, it actually felt like a normal conversation. Then I noticed he had missed the entrance to my building complex. I thought he got distracted, so I politely told him he'd missed the turn. He said he knew and that he'd circle back, but instead of turning around, he took a completely different route. It was still an area I recognized, so I tried to stay calm. But the silence inside the car began to feel heavy. It was almost 2:30 in the morning. The rain had gotten stronger, and there was no one else on the street. He missed the entrance again. I told him I could just get out there and walk, but he insisted it wasn't safe. I tried to joke, saying the longer ride was going to make me broke. He gave a dry laugh, and for a second I thought everything would be fine. It wasn't. As soon as he entered my street, the car stopped. I exhaled in relief and said, "Okay, this is perfect, thank you." I reached for the door handle, but it didn't move. I tried again, harder. Nothing. The lock wouldn't budge. Then he slowly turned his head toward me and said, "Let's grab a coffee." I froze. He tapped something on his phone, ending the ride, and the sound of the app echoed inside the car. Then he put his phone aside and looked at me with a strange smile. I tried to keep calm and told him I was tired, that I just wanted to sleep. He insisted we could stay there and talk for a bit. Then he asked if I lived alone. My whole body went cold. I said I lived with a roommate, trying to hide the fear in my voice. He went quiet for a moment, then asked what I was doing as I rummaged through my bag. I told him I was looking for my phone, because I had promised my boyfriend I'd call him when I got home. That was the worst mistake I made that night. His face changed instantly. The friendly look vanished. He asked my boyfriend's name, what he did, and where he was right now. His tone turned cold and sharp, not yelling, just heavy. The kind of anger that's worse because it doesn't make a sound. I tried to stay calm and gave vague answers, pretending I wasn't scared. I said my boyfriend was away, that it wasn't serious, that I was rethinking things. The man relaxed. Then he smiled a calm, empty smile. He said he understood, that I seemed like a genuine person, different from most. Then he asked for my number, just to make sure you get home safe. I hesitated, but I gave it to him. He called immediately to check, and my phone buzzed between the seat and the door. When I picked it up, he snatched it from my hand, deleted my boyfriend's contact, and handed it back. "Better this way, right?" he said, still smiling. I just nodded. We stayed in that car for over an hour. I barely remember what he said. Just the sound of the rain on the window and the metallic taste in my mouth. At some point, he asked if he could hold my hand. I said I couldn't, that I had to fix things with my boyfriend first. He seemed pleased with that answer. When the clock passed 4 a.m., he finally unlocked the door. I got out, trembling, and pretended to walk into the wrong building. I hid behind a doorway until I saw his car drive away. Then I ran to my apartment, locked everything, and collapsed on the floor, crying. I called my boyfriend. He was furious and told me to report it. Everyone always says that, but I couldn't. He knew where I lived. He'd seen my street, my face, my fear. For weeks, I couldn't ride in a car alone. Even now, I never take an Uber unless someone's with me, because every time the door closes and the car starts moving, I still hear that sound, the click of the lock, and I remember the feeling of being trapped. I was 27 at the time. My relationship was falling apart, and I didn't even know what still kept me there. It was my birthday, and I decided it would be the end. The last day I'd ever let someone make me feel small. I went to his place, we talked, and that was it. Strangely calm. The rain started to fall harder as I ordered a ride home. It was late, almost 2 a.m. I just wanted silence, to stare out the window and pretend the world was still safe. The car stopped in front of me. I got in, thanked him, and sank into the back seat. The driver seemed normal, until he started watching me through the rear view mirror. At first it was subtle, then shameless. Every glance felt like an invisible touch, crawling under my skin. I tried to ignore it, to pretend I didn't notice, but the rhythm of the car changed. He began to slow down on empty streets, as if he'd forgotten where we were going. Then he spoke. His voice was low, drawn out, trying to sound gentle. He told me I was beautiful, asked for my name. I answered quickly, wanting it to end, but he didn't stop. His tone shifted. It wasn't small talk anymore. It was something that made my stomach twist. Words that carried hidden edges. I could feel my body lock up, every instinct screaming to get out. He spoke like he knew me, like I belonged to some fantasy he'd built inside his mind. The smile he gave through the mirror made me feel dirty without being touched. I fixed my eyes on the window, counting raindrops, pretending to be calm. Yet the air in that car felt thicker with every mile, as if time itself had slowed down to watch what was happening. Then he turned on the radio. A song started playing. Vulgar, invasive, the kind of song that makes the room feel smaller. He turned up the volume and smiled again. The sound of his voice mixed with that music felt poisonous. Each word carried something sick, and I could feel it sinking in. I started texting my ex, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. He was the only one who would notice if I went missing. But before I could hit send, the driver shouted my name. His voice cut through the air like a blade. I froze. I said something, anything, to break the silence, pretending to sound calm, though every cell in my body was screaming to run. He began asking questions. Where I lived. If I lived alone. If anyone was waiting for me. Each question carried a smile that didn't belong to his face. I lied. Said my parents were awake and waiting. He went quiet for a moment, then said he knew a quieter place, where we could talk better. The way he said quiet made my skin crawl. I glanced at the map. He was taking a different route. My heartbeat was so loud I could barely hear the rain anymore. I started recording the conversation, hiding the phone in my lap, trying to keep my voice steady. Then my ex called. The relief in that sound almost made me cry. The driver looked irritated but stayed silent. My ex told me to answer him loudly, to say the street name, the time, the building, to make it sound like a normal call. I did exactly that. For the first time, I realized how close I was to home. The driver tightened his grip on the wheel. I could see the anger building in his reflection. When the car finally stopped, I didn't wait for him to turn the engine off. I opened the door and ran, the cold wind and rain cutting my face as I escaped into the dark. I ran to my building, heart pounding. The hallway lights were still on, and panic hit me. If he saw where the light turned on, he'd know which floor I lived on. I switched everything off and stood there in the dark, frozen, watching through the narrow window. He was still there. The car idled, headlights flickering, his face tilted toward the building like he was waiting for a signal. Time stretched painfully slow, every second loud in my chest. Then he got out, looked around, and finally drove off. Or so I thought. When I looked again, his car was back, parked this time. That's when the message came. From an unknown number. "Come back. I'm waiting for you." My whole body went cold. It was like the air had been drained from the room. I cried silently, gripping the phone so tight my hands hurt. He sent another message. Then another. When I didn't respond, he started calling. I blocked the number. From behind the curtain, I saw him hitting his phone against the steering wheel, furious. The sound echoed down the wet street until finally he drove away. I stayed by the window for hours, watching, waiting, listening for the sound of that engine. He never came back. But even when the sun rose, I couldn't breathe right. Since that night, I've never taken a ride alone after dark, because every rearview mirror still shows me the same eyes. The eyes of someone who thought he could choose me.